Is we set to go, Trina? Okay, thank you. It's certainly my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, someone who I'm sure does not need any introduction at all, Juanita Wheat Wilcox. We had asked Wheat a while ago if she'd be willing to come in and have a little conversation with us about her time living in Hansport, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Wheat, 1955, she and Jerry and 3 of the children moved to Hansport, and 3 more children shortly after that. The legacy of the Wilcox family is well known, and I hope we'll get a little bit more information on that as we go forward this evening. I just wanted to read a couple of things before we delve into asking Wheat a few questions, and she has some things that she wants to cover. But I think what we would like to get from this is some interaction from the people that are here. Any of the discussions or points that we're talking about, if anyone has any comments or thoughts or can add to.
Or correct my mistakes too.
Correct any mistakes, of which I'm sure there won't be any. Please chime in. Just put your hand up, and maybe because we are recording, if you just want to identify who you are, please make sure you speak up so that the microphone will catch it as well. So in 2019, no, that's not even my read. Let me read it first. The Hansport Area Historic Society nominated Wheat as our Volunteer of the Year for West Hants Region Municipality. And along with a lot of other organizations in West Hants, other names were put forward, and Wheat was selected to represent all volunteers in West Hants. She went to a reception in Halifax and did a wonderful job representing all of the volunteers. And I just wanted to do a little quick preamble as far as what some of the information that we gave, and I've just mentioned some of it before. Wheat and her husband Jerry moved to Hansport in 1955 with 3 children in tow when they purchased the Irving Garage on Main Street. Another 3 children were soon to be added to their family. While their children were young and still in school, Wheat was active with school activities in her church. Both Wheat and Jerry have been outstanding citizens over the years and have volunteered tirelessly with many groups, organizations, and municipal government. In 1995, Jerry was recognized by the town of Hansport at the Provincial Volunteer Awards ceremony in Halifax. I'm not going to highlight Wheat's activities as far as our society. I may do that as we go forward. I just do want to mention, though, in 2016, along with some other long-standing members of our organization, Wheat did receive an honorary life membership from the Hansport Area Historical Society for her contributions to our society over the years. Other involvements are certainly with the Avon United Church, formerly St. James United Church, the Hansport Board of School Commissioners, the Town of Hansport as a councillor, deputy mayor, and as well the business opportunities which Jerry worked through as far as the garage and then his home heating business as well. And as well, unknown by maybe some people here, but Wheat and Jerry were also recognized by the province as far as starting a Provincial Parks Campground Host Program, which started in Blomidon, and both of them were recognized for their contributions in 1997 for that. So, without further ado, Wheat has a list of some things that she'd like to start through. You've heard enough from me, so Wheat, please.
Thank you, Judd. I think probably the first thing I should do is take you for a walk down Main Street. When I moved here in 1955, quite a few will remember this, I'm sure. Starting up the corner, where now there is an apartment building across from the drugstore, that was Flo Hampton's dress shop. And they became very nice dresses, so we didn't have to go to town for that. So we crossed the street where the drugstore was, is Aunt Gine's. What was her last name, Judd? Aunt Jine? Masters, thank you. She had a little house in back with a fence there, and the young people like to hang out there. So we go next to that, and where the medical offices are, that was Dave Freeman, Ruth Freeman's electrical shop. Dave was an electrician in town, also mayor of the town at one time. From there was Daisy Fraser's house. It was a brown house set there where the vacant lot is. And she was a former school teacher. She lived to be over 100 years old. And sadly, when we were searching for unmarked graves up at the cemetery, hers happened to be one. But now she's recognized as her name is on the plaques up there in the Memorial Garden. And my memory going here. Then there was the 5 and 10. We actually had a 5 and 10. Mr. Giffen ran that. And next to that was another shop, and I think that's a grocery store, Pulsifer's grocery store. And somebody, Brian's room, nodding. I am right there. Yeah. Next to that is what is now the Home Hardware. There was a little short space there with a door in it, and you went into Austin Simpson's jewelry shop and she would watch repair. And is that right?
Did you mention Don Beckwith's?
Oh, sorry, yes, of course. You remember that, you hung out there probably. Yeah, Don's Restaurant, and that's a great place for the kids to come in after school. And he told me in later years how much he enjoyed that. Though probably at times when he probably had to straighten the boys out a bit and wondered if he did, but he did mention what it meant to him to have all those young people around. Then, as I say, we're back to where Home Harbor is now, and there was a small side of it that Austin Simpson had a jewelry store and then watch repair, and then Kurt McKenna was next door, where the Home Harbor is now. Next to that was a large house, which is now down at Chittick Avenue, the big gray house that was moved from there down. And George McBurney lived there with his family, and they had a barber shop. Next to that was my husband's garage, the Irving garage. And Slack's Electric was there next to that, and that was a big, huge two-story building with an apartment upstairs. Tucked in next to that was the Vino's house. That would be Gibber Vino's home growing up here. And then next to that where the beauty parlor is, and that Mac Duke had a little tea room restaurant there. I guess you could, or a fountain, I guess. So we'll cross over and come back up the street. So you got where the historical side is. It was then the new Bank of Nova Scotia. And it just opened there not too many years before. Mr. Harlow was the manager. And next to that was a large home. And maybe somebody can tell me who lived in it before George McBurney moved over. Anybody know that? Brian shaking his head. Judd?
That was the Lawrence property. Albert Lawrence, parents owned it. They also owned a property down on the end of William Street. And as the family grew, Albert Lawrence's family moved up, and parents switched back down to the other.
Thank you.
And that's why his banner is out in front of it on the pole next to our building.
Yeah, there you go, something new. And then we come to pretty well where the telephone place is, and there was a store there, and it was Ella Ribbon at that. And Doris Fraser took it over, and it was an insurance office, and then Mike Sabian got a start there in that little building. It was later burned and taken down. Walter Comstocks was the next house where Dale McKenna lives. Irene Falkenham lived in the house, and that was a Mitchener house many years ago. And then there was John Jakes had built a new home, the brick house in behind. And I don't know how many of you know that the house that Wendy Brothers lived in was the Anglican Church Rectory. And I moved here.
I know that.
That's right. And then there was the Tackery house. And then the next house, I think, was a Newcomb house. And where the liquor store is, there was the garage. And I think Super something.
Fina.
No, it wasn't Fina then. It's before the Fina time. It had another name.
I think it was Super.
Super something, wasn't it? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, and then the building where the pizza parlor is was divided as is now, and the one nearest this way would have been the drugstore. Bob Sink ran that. And then on the other side, when we came here, Led Cooley was just in the process of selling that. He and his wife were leaving town, and I'm not sure if the IGA took it over at that time or not, but it did remain a grocery store for quite some time.
It was a disco at one time,
Yeah.
too.
And then across the street, where Barking Bean is, was Mr. Oldershaw's store. So there's an idea of what the town looked like back in '55, a little different today.
And what I was doing, I just had an aerial photo that was taken of Main Street, and just as you were sort of mentioning the buildings or the properties, I was just trying to sort of let people know sort of where we were. This, of course, is the intersection of Main and School Street.
What year is that picture, Joe?
It's about mid-50s. I
Okay.
tried to find out for sure, but we have whatever it was, we have the whole package of the aerial photos we've taken of the town. So it's really quite interesting. And of course, all the buildings that are in the back, behind the buildings as well. But this is of course, this is School Street here, and this is the Aunt Jen Master's place. And what I remember mostly is that it was a sort of a raised walkway going into the building, and there was a metal fence around it, and all the boys, Craig included, would sit on that fence, and Chief Allard would come along, he'd say, "Boys, move along, move along." And so we'd move along, and then as soon as he went, we went back to the
I was wondering, who owned the garage before you? Jerry?
Oh, John James.
Yeah.
And he built he and I built the brick house that's set there by Wendy Brothers' side. Yeah.
Wheat, after you moved in '55, certainly the school would have been sort of part of your family's first activity within the town. Who was principal of the school?
Alistair Clark. He was there.
How many? Alistair Clark is principal? Everyone? Everyone? Okay, and just jump a little bit ahead on the school, because when Wheat and I had a meeting the other day, Hansport, the old school, which is now the apartment buildings on School Street, when that was still the schoolhouse, the number of students in Hansport were greater than the capacity of that school. So other buildings were used as classrooms. And what were the buildings that were used?
The old Legion building, not the new one they replaced, and the Anglican church. I know there's one person piece went there. Pat Keeler is one of the ones in the primary, wasn't it, Pat, over in Legion? Yeah.
And where was the old Legion building?
The old Legion
Where the
building.
library is now.
Where the library is. But that building burnt and they replaced it, remember?
The building burnt in the early '60s, I think, and going through some of the Legion minutes, there was some discussion whether to rebuild or just sort of move the whole operation in with Windsor Legion, and the decision was made to rebuild. So they rebuilt, and one of the things that the building was used for was school, kids. Why don't we just, the church was a big factor in your family.
It was, and the churches were all filled. Actually, when we moved here, we moved in October '55, and the Catholic Church had just opened and had their first service. I remember we moved to both the very first week in October, and they just had their first service at that time. And there was called Week of Prayer. Everything shut down. Stores weren't open in the evening, no bridge parties, no concerts, no nothing. Everybody went to church a week of prayer, of course. And of course on
John
Sunday.
Fox sitting there in the front.
Wheat has hasn't seen these, so I'm.
Oh, yes.
But
I
this
have
is
that.
a 64 picture of the Sunday school when Wheat said all the churches were full. She wasn't kidding.
Mostly Wilcox.
Yeah.
There's a little Jenny with
That
her
person's
back.
there. That person's here today. Let me see if anyone else is there. Wheat. That's
Two
Wheat.
brothers, Wilcox, and I think that,
We're in that picture, Jed. We're
Yeah.
in.
Philip Scott's there.
Jen's at the back.
I'm the good looking
Trying
one
to
right
hide.
here.
You notice they all had hats, gloves, dresses, and the little boys had ties. So it took a while to get them ready for Sunday school.
All the bow ties on.
A Wilcox.
Another one there, Karen.
A Wilcox. Whoops, sorry.
That's Karen there.
Not a Coogler, a Coogler.
That's Corinne there.
I don't know where Craig was that day.
Yeah, well,
Oh, you kicked me?
probably hiding behind you, Joe.
There's Leslie. There's Leslie.
And
Oh, yes, that is Leslie.
we, at the United Church, one of the activities that you were involved with was CGIT.
Yes. And your mother was with us too. We had quite a good CGIT in those days. I know anybody's here from those former days. Okay, good. It's good to see some here. Yeah. As you say, they came. You know, it wasn't just United Church. We had them from all the other churches too. And we had some great activities and camping times. It was a wonderful experience. And
So
I
there,
had my daughters in it,
so there would be Wheat,
and your mother's there.
and that would be my mother.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Who's that?
I wonder. Hey.
Susan.
Carol Kubler in the back now.
Anna Byrne. Susan Turner.
Susan, Terry Fraser, Terry Smith there in the front line, left.
Right here?
Yeah, I think that's Terry.
And 50th anniversary, I guess 1965 was the 50th anniversary of CGIT.
Yes. I was in CGIT when they did the 25th anniversary. Young girl.
Helen Anderson.
I was going to say,
And
Yeah.
when we moved here, just this little thing, and we got across from Sheila Anderson's house, the big gray house. It was an apartment, and we rented that for $35 a month. But it was small. We had the three little ones. We kept an eye out for a place. And eventually, we were able to move down the main street right beside Dr. Kenny's. We paid $35 a month over the Prince Street. And people were saying to us when we moved down there, "You're not going to pay $50 a month for that place, are you?" And when we moved down, there was no sewers at that time down in the street. We all had septic system. That was sort of interesting. And we lost a bit of our frontage, and the sidewalks went in after we moved there.
What have you got next on your list?
Well, what else is done? Let's see.
I don't.
Let's see. We covered quite a bit. Children, yes. You wonder why we had to get a larger school, which opened in 1961. On our street, that was just from William Street down to Tannery Road. There was 29 children from the houses, and Craig Kubler says there was 40 on Porter's Avenue. There's 5 over there today.
at least.
So you can see why we needed a bigger school. That was just 2 streets in town. Maple Avenue just opened up about the time we moved here, and that was only partway up the hill, wasn't it?
There were a lot of kids on Maple
Oh,
Avenue.
Yeah, a lot more there.
A lot of kids.
Chestnut and Cedar were not developed then, or Evangeline Drive. They all came in later, all new sections of town. Riverview had just opened, so you could see the town was starting to grow as much as we could. And then of course we had the mills, and Maurice Basket, and Gypsum Company. What else did? And so the industries were big. You know, the town was booming at that time. I'll see it. What else we had?
Just while you're looking at that,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but I just put up on the screen, you mentioned that the school was officially opened in 1961. And you had mentioned to me, and that's why I went looking for this, is that the Premier, Robert Stanfield, attended the opening of the school on December the 11th, 1961. But the other thing, interesting thing, I thought, if I could find it, also Wheat, as far as the school, you were involved with the Board of School Commissioners.
Mhm.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was interesting. And at that time,
Brian?
at that time, you had your council appointees, and then you had appointees, and that had to do if you were liberal or conservative. There was always one or the other appointed on the parties. And Helen Freeman, I think, was one of the first female commissioners, and also she was chairperson at one time. And I think I came in a little later than that. We went through when the school boards were all dissolved, and Hansport decided this wasn't going to be the thing. We were going to lose all our individual attention and everything, and we tried to hold out. There was one other school board, it's up in Cumberland County. I was trying to think where it was from. I do remember the board of that chairman. But in the end, it was David and Goliath, and David won. So we just realized that we just could not cope alone by ourselves, and I don't think it's been too bad a decision they made. We seem to be doing pretty well.
And Wheat, what I have up on the screen now is a list that came to our society. It hasn't been proved yet, but the first woman chair of the Board of School Commissioners was Mrs. Nellie Davison in 1938. The other lady that you mentioned is not on this list.
Ellen?
But I see all misters until we misters.
Ellen Freeman?
No, well, maybe not chair. She might have been on the board.
Oh, well.
But then chair from 1977 to 1985 was Anita Wilcox. And when we had our meeting the other day, I was working for the town of Hansport during that process.
That's right.
Of the town turning the school over to the Amalgamated School Board. And Wheat is right. There was a lot of back and forth with that. Brian, were you there at that time?
All I can do is remember very well Wheat's last meeting as chairperson. It was my first meeting as the new school principal, replacing Alan Clark, who had been there for 35 years. And that night, every one of the school board members resigned. I was all alone.
What's that tell you?
They decided they had been there long enough and it was time for new blood, I guess. New principal, all new school board.
When I went on council, I had to run 3 times. The first time, Harold Burden beat me by 2 or 3 votes, so we had a recount. Harold still stayed in as councilor. And the next year, I ran again, and this time I won, beating Wayne Fulmer. Wayne always said it was the only election he ever lost. He lost to me. But they were good years, and I know when I went in, women wasn't a thing in the council, and I know they didn't quite know what to do with me. It was sort of uncomfortable a bit. And of course, we opened the meeting. Every meeting was open with the Lord's Prayer. Every gentleman was ties, white shirts, dressed. I don't think it's the same today. What I watched on the council proceedings in Windsor, even more casual. But it was interesting times.
And one of the things when we had the meeting the other day, I remember well listening to Joe McGinn go on and on and on about this, the school and losing control of the school.
Yeah.
It was my understanding, and I did try to research this, but I didn't find it, of course, it wouldn't be written. It was my understanding that because we were outside the amalgamated system, the town had to pay a 10% fee to the amalgamated board anyway. And they were threatening to put that amount up, and that was one of the straws that broke the camel's back was if that fee went up, the tax base really wasn't going to be able to keep control of the school. And remember that it was the taxpayers of the town of Hansport that built the school and controlled the school. When I was rec director here, after hours, the school came under my domain. It was sort of it was a community school program. Once it went into the amalgamated system, that would be lost. So it was very much a lot of back and forth, whatever, but it finally became a money issue, and it's just one of the ones that.
City of Florence actually won that 10% dispute, and Hansport no longer had to pay that after Wheat became the chairperson. But numbers were what gave you the dollars to run your school, and by the time that they ceased as a school board, the primary enrollment was down to about 10 each year, and there was only about 11 in each of the grade 9s, 10 and 11. So they just couldn't keep going anymore with those low numbers.
I was able to find an article that was in the paper about the new school opening with some interesting things. It mentioned about Bob Stanfield being there, but the school cost $375,000 to build. So for a small community, that's significant funds. The other thing was, I won't be able to find it, Daisy Fraser. I didn't realize that she's taught at Hansport School for 26 years. Did anyone have Daisy Fraser as a teacher? The other thing is right here, in the handing over key ceremony, if you read through that, whatever, it said present the gold keys to Graham, and then in turn to Mr. Arthur Oldershaw, Chairman of the Board of School Commissioners. I wonder where those keys are. I wonder where those keys are. I don't know. The other thing is that also there was a presentation of Encyclopedia Britannica to the school made by the town councillor, Gerald Wilcox. And I wonder if those are still at the school. I must try to find that out. Just some little tidbits that we found there.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that school was built for 400 students. Believe it or not, but when you look at Porter's Avenue and Main Street, there was 60-some, almost 70 kids right there. They were having big families then. So we did go like that. And we had the home ec department, which was a real plus sector too.
Wheat, as far as, I mean, you did mention about your elections for councillor. I have down that you were councillor from 1971 to 1982.
That's right.
Deputy mayor, for sure, for 1982, probably other years as well. And you were a council representative, chairperson and committee member of Dyken Lodge for several years. You were also council representative on the board of the Hansport Memorial Community Center, and you served as secretary for that board for a few years as well. School, anyone that went to school, I know there's some people here, any thoughts, any comments about school? Favorite teacher? Mr. Clark?
Least favorite.
Well, I'll say he was one of my favorite teachers, but the one I remember most is probably Verna Sanford,
Yes.
grade 5. Grade 5. And Mrs. Dexter, grade 1.
And
And Dexter, grade 1.
We're pretty desperate teachers for a while, and we were getting former people who lived in town that had been former teachers, and they came in and filled the bill big time.
Gloria?
I know this is not Hansport related, but in Hansporter, where there was quite a few children, we had Esther May was the principal there.
That's right.
Mr. May Scott?
Yeah, so remember that too.
It's funny, the things that I remember is that no snow days. All the teachers lived in town. I remember Ethel Young trudging through snowbanks to get to the school. And then we'd have to trudge through the snow to get to school as well. It just didn't seem fair. I don't know.
And we went home at dinner time. Some of them were way up Bryan Street walking, they actually walked. And back for lunch and then back to school.
We stop at Overshaw's store and get some candy to get us through the afternoon.
Another thing I didn't mention, we had 2 doctors in town, Dr. G.K. Smith, his house is right next to the Barking Bean there on Prince Street, and Dr. George Kenny, who was our neighbor for many years. And around, I was looking around today and checking some notes, around 1968 or so, Dr. Ritchie came for some time, so it was one time we had 3 doctors.
Not anymore. Again, through council, you were represented on the Hansport Memorial Community Center. Certainly your children took advantage, as all families did, of the community center. Any thoughts on the community center, or?
Well, in those days, every child could swim. There was no charge for swimming lessons, and the swim meets were a big thing. We had the Kilburys and the Parsons and the Wilcoxes and the Turners, and didn't you get into swimming then? I didn't. But it was great. I mean, you just, it was a swim meet, you were there, and you were hollering and screaming for the kids. It was a big time, and it was actually it was the first outdoor pool, wasn't it, in Nova Scotia, if I remember correctly.
It was one of the first community outdoor pools.
Yeah, and so all the meets were pretty well held there at the time, because there wasn't any other place else to hold them.
We traveled a lot, like we went to Stadacona,
Yeah,
Kempful.
yeah, that's right. You're one of the swimmers.
Yeah, we
that's
went
right.
to a lot.
Yeah.
But they could pile like a van full of kids. And no seatbelts, just a van full of kids. Yeah.
It wasn't the first outdoor pool, but it was the largest pool, outdoor pool, this side of Montreal.
Was it really? Didn't know that.
But, Windsor had a pool before us, Kempful, Bridgetown, Middleton, all did. Windsor had one that was out the back of the Pond where Walker's Restaurant is. It was a small pool out there. But ours was the largest.
And very fortunate. The pool opened July 1st, 1955. The first pool director was Jocelyn Fraser.
Crazy.
I think that first year, 1955, Bill, were you a member of the staff of the pool? And Mrs. Fraser her background was in the military, I believe, regimented, whatever, and that's why there was such a quick development, I think, of the swim team. Hansport having a new pool did very well
Sure
in these meets early on. Yeah.
And then
Sorry, go ahead.
July 1st, it was different in those days. They had booths set up all over the place. There was turtle races and what other things?
Rabbits.
Rabbits. So you did a little betting on them. And then, of course, Lynch's Fair was there. The pavilion, the dance pavilion was there in those days. Was it called a dance pavilion, just pavilion?
The dance
The
pavilion.
dances were held on that. And then there was the roller coaster derbies, and I think Judd can tell you more about them, because at that time my boy was small. You want to tell a few stories about that, Judd?
Well, I had quite a meeting. I can remember Garnet McCabe was the one that was in charge of the soapbox derby races. And initially they started going down Holmes Hill, which was, steep at the top, but then it sort of leveled out. But then, for some reason, when Maple Avenue was paved, I assume Garnet or somebody decided, let's move it off of Holmes Hill and let's put it on Maple Avenue. So that it's a very steep hill. So you started up, I think by where Lou Irvin lived, if I remember correctly, and you were supposed to stop down where Gussie Moore lived. It would give you a few yards before crossing into Holmes Hill. And I remember they put a couple of bales of hay across the street by the sidewalk, the curb, and the first person that went down, they couldn't stop them. They went right across Holmes Hill, broke through the hay, up over the curb, across the sidewalk, and down. Those two little houses weren't there then, and down into the grass and the muck or whatever stopped them. So I think it was only on Maple Avenue 1 year. That's what I remember about it.
It never happened today.
No helmets.
No, nothing.
tougher back then.
I don't know about that. And the other thing that I was mentioning about the community center, how fortunate as young people to grow up in a community that we had our own school, there was community use all the time, and then in the summertime to have the community center that I know that my family members all spent our summers there. So it was really a great community as a young person to grow up in, for sure.
When we moved here, the playground had a paid attendant. And that was Marion Phillips, I think it was at the time. She sat there every day, watched the children get hurt or whatever. And we did have a theater here, down where the old Union Hall is. And I think just about the time we came here, they were still having the minstrel shows. Of course, they quickly got kibosh, and the graduation exercises were held down there because the old school didn't have the accommodations for graduation, and of course the movies. And they lined up and got in there. Anybody remember what you paid to go to the movies? Probably nickel dime.
Must have been cheap because I've seen Ten Commandments about 10 times.
So,
I just wanted to, this again, the aerial photo that's sort of the mid-50s, I think, but Wheat was mentioning a couple of landmarks, whatever, community center is sort of here, you don't see all of it, but I just want to, again, this is the old schoolhouse, this is School Street, and lo and behold, what's this right here?
Ball rink.
Great.
The rink.
Ball rink, so this would have been where the current school is now. And you mentioned about the playground, and this little square is the wading pool, and the little, where the water came through. And this right here is the dance pavilion. That used to be there. This whole area now would be the Med Sterrett Field. I think, maybe in the 50s it was sort of looked square. I'm not sure that it was used for tennis courts at that time. It was probably later. And of course that's now all the Med Sterrett Field. So just, I'm not sure. Well, see, these are shadows, so it makes it. So I mean, Jane, help me. Is this the Duke Cole house that was moved up to the end of the ball field? One of these is.
Is that the Scout Hall?
This one?
No, the next one.
Well, is that a shadow? I could.
No.
That's a building.
Okay. Well, yeah, but it's
That
all.
would be the Scout Hall.
So does anyone think that that's the Scout Hall then?
Yes.
This one here?
It was just across from the school.
And it was a barn. Jared, they used to play basketball in that building with the dark roof.
Okay.
The school kids did.
Yeah. Well, and the stories, of course, that I heard of Givino, the backboard to the basketball hoop was right on the wall. It wasn't away from the wall. So when teams would come in to play in the Scout Hall, they would normally, in their own gym, the backboard would be away from the wall. So they would crash into the wall. But Givino would dribble through everyone, and he would come on an angle and put his leg out and sort of put it on the wall and go up higher to do a layup into the Scout Hall.
And the building had metal rods that went across to hold it together, so other teams couldn't quite figure out how to shoot without hitting the metal rods. And the worst score that I can remember was Hansport beat Wolfville 52-0. Wolfville never mastered how to shoot around.
should I mention Halloween? It was a little different those days. When mine went out, I said, "Did Mr. Aller get you? You don't come home." He had a little holding place down there, town hall. I said, "You'll be spending the night there." I was coming to rescue, but remember the windows were all marked up. A few other things I didn't know about. Pat Huber was laughing here. But you're not telling any tales, are you, Pat? No. Quite different those days. But I really think the growing up years of those that grew up in the late 50s, 60s, and 70s lived in the greatest times they could have. The war, the Depression years are behind us. The war was over. Money was starting to become more available. People were building their homes, and you were still able to walk places, play anywhere you wanted. And you know, the neighbors kept an eye out for each other's kids. Rich Kenny told me one day he was visiting me, he says, Mom always knew what I'd done before I ever made it home. Somebody was calling them to tell her what I'd done. So that's what we did. We kept an eye on each other. And as I say, that generation has grown up in the very best of times as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So, anything else, Jim?
Are you on your list? You're okay? I do want you to touch on, again, I think there's probably people here that don't or didn't know about the host program for parks, provincial park. Do you just want to mention a little bit about that? A little background on it?
Okay. Jerry and I had driven across Canada several times, and one of our trips was up to Alaska. And we were at a campground there, got talking to the gentleman next to us in the lower United States. And he'd come up to do camp hosting. So we got talking to him about it, and he was telling me about it. Jerry and I thought about it, so we were heading down through the U.S. on the way home. We stopped in New Hampshire and said, you know, do you take Canadians to the campground host program? Oh, we'll take anybody that's willing to volunteer to do some help. So we ended up 2 years in Michigan, at Little Bay de Mock up in Upper Michigan, had a wonderful experience there. And we came home, and the Nova Scotia government was asking people to make presentations to improvements to the provincial parks. So Jerry and I looked at each other and said, why don't we bring this? So we did get a paper ready and went down and presented it, and it was received very well. And the first thing we knew, Downey was the Minister of Natural Resources at that time, and we got word that they wanted us to come to the government house, that they were interested, and they were adopting the program. So we did go down to government house when it was presented, and then from there, we went to Blomidon as the first host in the program. And there was just 3 of us that year, and it grew to, we had 40, 50 hosts. And now, with COVID, it took up a slide backwards. People weren't, you know, able to go and camp as much, and they dropped the host program. But it's back in full force again, and I'm very proud to say that number 4 daughter, Karen, and her husband are from camp hosting, so second generation. And maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm a bit proud of it. There's a trail in Blomidon that they named the Wilcox Trail. As I say, a great believer in it, and glad to see it's still developing.
This is, Wheat doesn't know I'm showing these. This is a picture of the Wilcox Trail that Wheat just mentioned. Picture of her and Jerry. And this picture hangs in Wheat's living room.
It's just a short trail down there. It's good to families can take their children, which makes it nice. And daughter Karen is working on getting some signs up there that, you know, that they had signs up, but they disappeared, and they managed to find a few explaining the names of the trees and some of the plant life in the trail. It's just a short trail. Say we were quite pleased to have that. I was sorry that Jerry hadn't been allowed to see it. He would have been smiling away, not saying much, but very happily smiling.
Wheat. I mentioned your activities with our historical society, and one of the committees that you worked on, along with others who are here tonight, was the Memorial Gardens. Do you just want to tell some people that may not know about Memorial Gardens a little bit of background on it?
Well, it was actually Jane Halliburton's idea. Jane had found out that, you know, there were several people up there with with no stones to mark that they've been buried there. And she was on representative with you, Dave, wasn't she, on the town council for from the historical society? Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she sparked interest with the town council first, and of course when we amalgamated, and it was through the historical society, it wasn't that they were doing this. And once amalgamation came, it was carried on, and Jane was the spearheaded it.
That's Jane there.
Yeah.
There she is. And till her health gave out, she had to go to Manning. At the time, I was chosen as chairperson. And I must say, we tramped many, many hours, didn't we? That Brian and David are there and looking for these places and papers and records and everything. How many was the total in the end that were marked? You better remember?
It was over 100, wasn't it, I think?
We started with over 200, we
Yeah.
narrowed it down, I think, to around 100.
Yeah, it took many hours, didn't it? Because we had to make contacts with families and that. And to say, I was, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say it was a very meaningful project. I mean, I really felt good about working on that one.
Just to add one thing to
Yes, of course.
with what Wheat's saying there, it was very emotional for some people because I can remember one family, their baby had died, and they were so grief-stricken at the time when they buried the baby, they didn't go back to the cemetery, and by the time they did, they couldn't remember where the baby had been buried. And that was very heartbreaking for them. They eventually had the baby's name added to their own stone later on, but then they were very pleased that we included the child in with our memorial ones as well. So there were a lot of stories like that.
Yeah. Yes, please.
And some people who had just had old wooden crosses that over the years deteriorated and disappeared.
Yeah, it took a lot of work, I would say. Just trying to think of something. Oh, yeah, another thing was, they would find someone, say, well, there's not, can't find her. Well, married again. Probably find her over with her first husband. That happened quite often. And that's, so there was a lot of detective work to get it done to the stage where we were able to put it together into the plaques.
And I just wanted to say the pictures that were taken at the dedication ceremony, Rosemary Stewart and Mount Denson Garden Club have basically taken care of the 4 beds that are there. Regrettably, if you're up recently, you'll note there aren't that many flowers, simply because the deer tend to like the flowers. So we moved from flowers to other foliage, but it was a great project for the Historical Society. And as Wheat said, it's sort of spearheaded by Jane, but then we moved in along with help from the committee members it was a great project for the society. So greatly appreciate it. Wheat, did you have anything else?
I can't think of anybody.
Does anyone have any questions or any comments for Wheat? Because I have a couple of things I want to do before we end up. Sorry, back to everyone. I apologize. Anyone have any questions, comments?
I just want
Joan?
to say, we appreciate your knowledge and your oral history and your memory. Tell us how old you are. Tell us how old.
Oh, it's no secret. Everybody in town knows. I think I'm 96.
Anything else? No, not quite, Wheat. No, I've got a couple of things. When I think of Wheat, a lot of things come to mind, and the one that I think of, most often, it happened in 2019, and if you remember the march for the Abateau, and there was quite a turnout for that march, whatever. Not a very nice day to be able to do a little walk along the old number 1 highway, but I took some pics of that day, whatever, and That was one, I asked Wheat to stop, so I could take a picture of her face on. She said, nope, I'm heading home. That's the way back to hand sport? Nope, I'm heading home. So, I always think, when I think of Wheat, I always sort of think of her bundled up with her walker and she's going home. So, Wheat, on behalf of the Historical Society, we'd like to thank you for chatting with us this evening, and certainly for all that you've done over the many years, not just you, but Jerry and your family members as well. We really appreciate it. Thank you. And as I mentioned before, we had hoped to have this week talk to us in October, and we weren't able to have the meeting due to circumstances, but we recently had a birthday a little while ago. So we'd like everyone to stay, and we have some cake over here and some hot chocolate. So please stay. Say hi to Wheat, and please, we're going to blow some candles too. I didn't give them time enough.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just kind of so Jerry both skated around in their 80s and Windsor.
Oh, did you hear what Debbie said?
No, I'm sorry.
She said that both you and Jerry skated in Windsor well into your teens, was it?
Jerry was
80s.
90.
80s.
Jerry
80s.
was 90 and I was, oh, I would say more younger than him. Well, that's taken 1983. Yeah. I could have kept on, but after Jerry passed on,
They were beautiful skaters.
Wheat, how many years did you ride a motorcycle back and forth to Donnie Morris's?
Oh, not too long. Life was good.
Yeah.
Are we going to, Mark,
Yes,
what are we going to do?
we're inviting everyone.
Well, can we just get a picture maybe with Wheat, with the,
Can you take the
take her over there?
over there?
Yeah.
I was going to take the cake there,
But it doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
rather than.
Want to get a picture of you with
You
Wheat?
want to carry it over there, do you think? Yeah.
Somebody else.